One of the most contentious subjects in public education is the subject of testing. There's often a lot of anxiety, a lot of confusion around testing in public schools and what it means for students, what it means for families, and what it means for school districts and county offices of education. Here to help us make some sense of that today is Teri Burns, legislative advocate for CSBA. Thanks for joining us, Teri.
Hi, Troy. Glad to be here.
So today we're going to look a little bit more closely at the California Assessment for Student Performance and Progress. This is the newest testing and accountability system that California has introduced. So just tell us a little bit about the design of the system.
Sure. The CAASPP tests is a series of tests, actually, and what you've just seen come out are the Smarter Balanced Assessment scores in math and language arts. There are more parts of that test, of the system, that are going to come out at different times: English language learner progress, the science test, the alternative assessments. But what we're looking at right now are the math and language arts assessments. Tell you a little bit about those, how they differ from the STAR tests. The old STAR tests were almost exclusively multiple choice pencil and paper. We all did those. The new test, the Smarter Balanced test, is an adaptive, computer adaptive online assessment, which means when you answer a question, if you get it right, the computer automatically gives you a little harder question. If you get it wrong, it gives you a little easier question. So it really evaluates what your ability is within the curriculum. There's a second part to the test, which is a performance assessment, where you actually have to write and do things and show your work. Both of these methods really concentrate on the rigor of the system and help you identify your thinking processes. What we're trying to do with this new system is get you to think deeply about the questions and come up with answers. We're looking for tests that will help you know if you're going to do okay in the new world economy, in jobs that don't even exist yet.
So the emphasis is more on critical thinking, problem solving, and writing, as opposed to just rote memorization.
Or just coloring in C in every bubble, right?
Taking some of the guesswork out of it.
Exactly.
Great. So one thing that we're interested in is, how does this really contrast in terms of the benefits for students and the student experience with the STAR?
Well, under the old test, you didn't get quite as much information. Parents now have their individual student test scores, so they can see how their student has improved and the areas within each discipline where their students are strong and where they could use some more help. So that's easier both for the student and the teacher to know what to be focusing on. As a whole, the test is testing our new California state standards. Our old tests were not aligned to the new standards, so this is moving us to actually testing what we're teaching in our classrooms. And it's preparing kids to think in new ways. We all admit that we're teaching kids, preparing them for jobs that don't even exist yet, that economic systems are changing so fast. So this is calling for that critical thinking.
So the most recent results from the CAASPP were basically flat with the previous year. Some people say that's to be expected early on in the process. We're only in year 3, while others were more critical, expected to see a stronger trajectory. Where do you fall?
You know, we would love to have seen a big bump, but it isn't really expected. We are very early in the process. We're testing 3.2 million kids, so you wouldn't expect a big swing anyway. Most school districts are just now purchasing the textbooks that are aligned to the standards. So they're doing the professional development with their staff. They're doing all of the new things. We had a big bump last year, and maintaining that bump is not an unreasonable place to be.
So for a board member who's confronted by a concerned parent who wants to see more progress, what kind of response can you provide to that interested citizen?
And I'd say, yeah, we need to give a little more time. We as a board are looking at it real carefully. You need to be honest about your dirty data. If you slid back, you need to say, we're going to see what we're going to do about this in the next year, what actions we're going to take. You need to be honest. You're going to say, our district focused on math last year, and that's why we had a little bit of a bump in math. English went down. So we're going to also focus on that, but we've decided as a district that math is our focus, or whatever your own case may be. But I would encourage folks to not be too dramatically concerned at this point.
So the testing we've discussed is really just one piece of the overall accountability system. The other part is how you take the results of those tests and work with your community to decide where you're going to focus your efforts, where you're going to strengthen, and where you're going to direct your resources. And that part is embodied in the Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP. Talk about how that fits in with the testing.
Absolutely. That's exactly where we're at. You need to look at your scores, and you need to look at a broad cross-section of comparable data. How is one school doing compared to another school? How is one third grade doing compared to another third grade in our district? Are there places that we need to make improvements, strengthen things? Are we doing the best things we can with the resources we have? The Local Control and Accountability Plan is where you make your plan for how you're going to address those concerns. So you're going to look and see if we really want to continue to focus on math, how are we going to put dollars there? If we want to close the achievement gap between our student groups, how are we going to put dollars and focus those there? So you're looking at what are the best practices out there that we have, that our neighbors have. If you've got one school that's performing really well, look at that. What are they doing there that we can replicate? You may have a neighbor district that's much like yours. What are they doing? Can we replicate that? The LCAP is where you're saying this is where we're focusing our dollars to make improvements on those students.
One of the other areas of emphasis for the local control funding formula and for the LCAP was on achievement gaps and how those groups that have been underserved or underperforming in some ways can be supported, and we can increase equity, close the achievement and opportunity gaps. So how is the SMART board member using the CAASPP results to influence that process?
Absolutely, and the dashboard is out. The dashboard, you saw it in the spring, didn't have as much data as it will have when it's released in the fall, sometime after Thanksgiving. But that will show you how each of your student groups are performing. And your district probably has that data now to begin those discussions. How are our African American students? How are our Latino students? How are our American Indian students? How are our foster youth doing in each of these? There's no excuse anymore to say, well, we're doing fine in math and not have that data. That data's there. It's there to ask those tough questions. If there are student groups that are not performing as well, you need to be asking, what can we do for those student groups? What's causing that? The beauty of the dashboard and the beauty of the 8 state priorities is that we are looking at more than test scores as we get to student performance. We know that parent engagement matters. We know that school climate matters. We know that attendance matters. Maybe what you're looking at when you look at the whole picture of your school site, if one school site's doing much better than another, and you see attendance at the poor performing school isn't doing well, maybe that's where you want to put your resources. Maybe the teaching is fine on math, the kids just aren't there to learn it. Look at all of your data as a whole and make those decisions for each of your student groups. Don't let anybody be left out.
And do you anticipate any changes, any modifications in the next year or two coming to CAASPP?
I don't anticipate changes in the math and language arts tests. We are testing for the first time this year the new science test that's aligned with the new next generation science standards. So you'll see that roll out, and that will be part of this CAASPP system. This was the last year we're doing the CELT test for English learners. A new test will be in place soon for the LPAC, the English Language Proficiency Assessment. And so those are both going to be much more computer adaptive. Again, that much more deep critical thinking type test. So you're going to see those soon.
And what resources could you recommend for board members as they try and support district staff and community in grappling with the CAASPP and the overall accountability system?
Sure. CSBA is coming out with a report on this new Smarter Balance data, math and language arts, very soon. There are other reports that we have on that. The State Board of Education and CDE have numerous resources, videos on how to understand your CAASPP scores, how the whole system fits together, what's happening with the new science standard, both for board members and practitioners, and specific documents for parents in multiple languages.
Teri, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your expertise. It's been a big help.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.